Welcome to this week's video briefing. When Argentina in 2001 defaulted on about $100 billion of debt, it inflicted the predictable pain on creditors and subjected the Argentine economy to a period of protracted pain and dislocation. There were agreements in 2005 and 2010 under which bondholders would be repaid, and the matter seemed to be progressing fairly smoothly until a month ago when a New York court decided that those who had not accepted the agreement and had held out for better terms were justified in proceeding with them. Suddenly, the question of a reoccurrence of default emerged, and by the middle of December, Buenos Aires would be almost in the same position as it was way back in 2001. I'm with Jill Hedges, and we're going to explore some of the implications of that. There has, in fact, Jill, been a stay of execution overnight in UK time.
Well, very much so. The earlier court ruling would have forced Argentina to make full payment to the holdout bondholders of about $1.3 billion on December 15th, when payments to holders of restructured debt are also due. They've always refused to do that, and in this particular case, if they had refused to make that payment, they would also have been unable to make the scheduled payment to bondholders, and they would have fallen into a technical default. Now, overnight, the Court of Appeals has frozen this ruling for the time being to give time for new arguments to be presented. So now the Argentine government has until the end of December to file new arguments. In January, they will get arguments both from the holdout funds and also from the holders of restructured debt who have been incorporated as interested third parties. And there will be a final hearing on the 27th of February. So there has been at least a delay in any eventual resolution of the case. I think much of this is probably due to the fact that for the first time the Argentine government has expressed the willingness to reopen the bond swap yet again for the holdouts on the same terms that were offered in the previous swaps, which is a write-down of about 70%, but they have been paying religiously on the restructured debt.
Will they require congressional approval to make that offer?
It will require congressional approval, but they will get that. I don't think that's a concern. I don't think they would get approval of an offer that was more favorable to the holdouts than what has been offered previously.
And the holdouts may not accept it.
I think that's quite likely. They've not accepted up until now. On the other hand, if they were to get 30%, it's more than they've received up to now. It may depend on whether they feel they're going to get a favorable ruling from the appeals court. Yes. There will be, whatever happens, I think, at the appeals court level, this may go as far as the US Supreme Court, so it will still take some time to play out. But up until now, there's been no willingness on the side of either the holdouts or the government to engage in any kind of negotiations. Now the government has shown willing here, which I think probably plays favorably with the appeals court, and also the fact that they have allowed other interested parties, including the holders of restructured debt, to participate is something that the lower court had not accepted, and I think that's also probably more favorable to the Argentine position.
Let's just look at the risk here. What's at stake in terms of rulings going again in an adverse direction for Argentina? We've got exposure of Argentine assets again. We've got problems with corporations raising the funds and the credit that they need. It's not a small matter.
No, it's not a small matter. Argentina has not had access to international financial markets since the default in 2001, so in the short term there's probably not a huge impact on domestic debt, but Argentine companies are constrained by the ceiling on sovereign debt, and that of course has been cut. Standard & Poor's cut by one notch, and Fitch the day before yesterday by 5 notches on the theory that a default might be imminent. This affects corporate debt. It affects, I think, very much the possibility of getting investment in companies like YPF, the oil company, which is now state-controlled again. So the implications in the medium term are quite severe. They're also severe for import and export credit, I think.
Two final questions, one domestic, one wider in its implications. What about the impact on the government of Christina here, because she's been very unpopular. We've seen protests in the streets over recent weeks. Is there something that she can turn to her advantage in terms of domestic standing?
I think at least in the short term, yes, because the refusal to pay holdouts, I think, does play well domestically. The government's been very coherent on this. They've always said that they will honour the restructured debt and that they will not negotiate with the holdouts, and up until now they've done that. So I think, yes, domestically it plays well. I don't think it's a sufficiently important issue in the minds of most Argentines on a day-to-day basis to have a long-term impact. More broadly, the risk that a judge can force equal treatment to holdouts with those who have accepted restructured debt. More broadly, I think it raises issues about future debt restructurings, just because there's no obvious incentive to accept a restructuring if you think that you can then force full payment. And that it's less of an issue now because the whole Argentine default prompted an increase in the use of collective action clauses. So we'll see it as less of a problem in future, but I think the risk is still there that it will make bondholders more obdurate in the event of a default. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. Jill, thanks very much, and thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to find any more information about what we've discussed today, or indeed other aspects of our analysis and advisory services, we'd love to hear from you. Do contact us via our website.